Welcome to Reddit Revenge Stories. Did you know over 90% of our viewers don't subscribe? If you enjoy this video, please subscribe and hit that like button. We're targeting 500 likes on this one. Let's dive into today's tale. They say marriage is built on trust, but what they don't say is how fragile that trust really is. I learned that the hard way. My name is David, and I've been married to Sarah for 12 years. Or at least I thought I was married, until everything I believed in got shattered, like glass under a steel boot. Sarah and I met in college. She was studying to be a teacher. I was grinding through business school. She had this calmness about her, the kind that could quiet a room without even saying a word. I was drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. We dated for 2 years, got engaged right after graduation, and married 6 months later. Life wasn't always easy, but we made it work. Or so I thought. I run a small but successful logistics company in Denver. Long hours, constant calls, numbers and shipments always running through my head. But I always made time for Sarah. We didn't have kids, something we decided to wait on, and honestly, that always felt like a mutual choice. We traveled, hosted dinner parties, did game nights with our circle of friends. From the outside, we probably looked like the model couple. Inside, I thought we were solid. I thought I knew her. But the truth is, I didn't know a damn thing. It started small. Little changes, so subtle I brushed them off. Sarah started spending more time volunteering at school. She'd leave early, come home late. At first I admired her dedication, then it started getting odd. She'd come home with excuses that didn't quite match up. Said she was at a school board meeting, but there were no messages from the board in her inbox when I needed to find an email for our taxes. She said she was helping a student's parent with something, but couldn't remember the parent's name when I casually asked. Little things. But little things pile up. I didn't confront her right away. Maybe I didn't want to believe it. I blamed it on stress. I even blamed myself. Told myself I was working too much, maybe not giving her enough attention. So I planned a weekend getaway. Just the two of us, no phones, no emails, just fresh mountain air and quiet time. She agreed, said it sounded perfect. But the day we were supposed to leave, she claimed she had a last-minute emergency at school. Said one of her students had a family crisis and she couldn't leave them in the lurch. I tried to be supportive. I told myself it was just bad timing, so I went alone. That weekend, something shifted in me. I spent hours hiking and thinking, and I realized I didn't know who Sarah really was anymore. When I got back, I decided I wasn't going to sit in the dark anymore. I started paying attention, not just to her words, but to her habits. Her phone was suddenly always locked. She kept it face down. She had new clothes I hadn't seen her buy. And there was one name that kept popping up in casual conversations. Michael. A fellow teacher, apparently. At first it was subtle. Michael said the lesson plan worked well. Or, Michael brought donuts for the staff meeting. But soon, his name was in every story. Always in the background. I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone. And yes, I know that crosses a line, but something in my gut told me the line had already been crossed. She hadn't deleted the messages. Maybe she thought I'd never look. Maybe she didn't care. But what I saw made my stomach turn. They weren't sexual, not outright, but they were intimate. Too intimate. Inside jokes, long conversations late at night, talk of feelings, of understanding each other in ways that Sarah and I hadn't in years. She called him Mikey. She told him things she hadn't told me. She shared pieces of herself that used to be mine. It wasn't just emotional. There were references to meetings, off-site school training, weekend conferences, places they'd both coincidentally attended. Hotel names, times. I felt like a fool. But I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed more than texts. I needed the full picture. So I hired someone, a private investigator named Jeremy, an ex-cop who now tracks cheating spouses for a living. I hated that I needed him, but I needed to be sure. He was efficient, professional, and within 2 weeks he had what I needed. Photos, dates, times, hotel rooms, lies, all confirmed. Sarah had been seeing Michael for over 6 months. Weekend conferences were cover-ups, late school meetings were dates. They'd even spent the night together at a cabin Sarah and I had once gone to on our anniversary. That one hurt more than anything. Still, I didn't explode. Not yet. I'm not the kind of man who yells or throws things. I don't believe in rage, I believe in strategy. I made a plan. First, I contacted my lawyer. We'd written up a prenup before we got married. At the time, it seemed unnecessary, but my father had insisted. Sarah had agreed without much resistance. Now I was glad for that. Infidelity nullified her claims to any of the business, any shared assets, even the house. The only thing she'd be legally entitled to was what she brought into the marriage, which wasn't much. She didn't know that I'd updated the clauses a few years ago after we hit a rough patch, adding infidelity language that favored me. She'd signed it without reading, trusted me completely. Irony at its finest. Next, I started shifting things quietly, moved money into protected accounts, changed the locks on the cabin, cut her access to certain company perks she didn't even know she had. I waited patiently while she continued her little charade. Then, I told her we were invited to a dinner party, some of my business partners and their wives. I said it would mean a lot if she came. She agreed, probably thinking everything was still fine, or at least salvageable. She dressed up, smiled, even kissed me as we got into the car. But we didn't go to a dinner party. I drove her to a small private conference room at my office. Inside were Jeremy, my lawyer, and the evidence, neatly laid out on a table. Photos, texts, dates, hotel receipts, a copy of the prenup with her signature. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "This," I said, "is the moment everything changes." I didn't yell, I didn't cry, yet I laid it all out, calm, clear, measured. She tried to deny it at first, then tried to cry, then tried to blame me. I let her go through all the stages, but I didn't flinch. I told her I wanted a divorce. I told her I was keeping the house, the cars, the business. That, according to the prenup, she'd walk away with barely anything. She begged, swore it meant nothing, that it was a mistake, that she didn't love him, that it was just a distraction. She reached for me. I stepped back. "You chose him," I said. "You made that choice over and over again. And now I'm choosing myself." She broke down then, on the floor crying, mascara smudged. But I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt free. I gave her a deadline. Move out within a week. No contact with me. No contact with my family. If she cooperated, I wouldn't pursue a morality clause that would ruin her teaching career. I wasn't out for blood. I was out for justice. And that, I thought, was the end of it. But I was wrong. Because revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about building something better and letting them see it. That part came next. I thought that kicking Sarah out and cutting her off would be the end of it. That I'd walk away from the wreckage and move on. I had the evidence. I had the legal advantage. I had the closure, at least that's what I told myself. But the truth was, some messes don't clean themselves up just because you decide they're over. Some ghosts don't stay buried. Sarah left quietly, I'll give her that. She packed up most of her things while I was away at the office. I came home one evening and she was gone. No note, no final words. Just a stripped-down closet, a hollow silence, and the faint scent of her perfume clinging to the air. I didn't miss her. What I missed was the version of her I thought I knew. But even that started to fade once I remembered all the lies. My friends were supportive. Most of them had seen something in her before I did. They never said it out loud, but once the news got out, a few admitted they'd always had a strange feeling about Sarah. That stung more than I expected. Maybe I'd been so blinded by love or habit that I refused to see what others saw clearly. I focused on the business. We were in the middle of expanding into 2 new states, and I threw myself into the grind. Long hours helped. It felt good to build something, to control something. My company didn't lie, didn't sneak around. It gave back what I put into it. It made sense. But no matter how much I buried myself in work, Sarah's betrayal lingered in the background. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the fire-burning kind of way, but I wasn't over it either. I knew Michael still worked at her school. that they were likely still involved. Or maybe not. Maybe she dumped him when her life blew up. Either way, I knew there were loose ends. And I wasn't finished. Revenge isn't always loud. It doesn't have to be fire and fury. Sometimes it's cold, strategic, a slow burn. And I had a plan. The first thing I did was contact a man named Curtis Monroe. He wasn't a private investigator, he was a fixer, a discreet one. He specialized in collecting information, digging deep into the kind of records most people assumed were buried forever. I didn't want dirt on Sarah. I already had that. I wanted it on Michael. Curtis delivered. Michael, as it turned out, wasn't the upstanding, inspiring teacher everyone thought he was. He had a history, a sealed HR report from another district, an inappropriate relationship with a parent of one of his students. Nothing criminal, nothing that stuck legally, but enough to raise eyebrows. He left that district quietly and started fresh at Sarah's school. I now had leverage. I sent the report to the school board, anonymously, of course, along with some of the evidence Jeremy had gathered, hotel stays that overlapped with school events, suspicious absences. I didn't mention Sarah directly. I didn't need to. Let them connect the dots. Within 3 weeks, Michael was suspended, pending an internal investigation. It made the local news. Just a blip, but enough to damage his reputation. Sarah's name wasn't mentioned, but the fallout found her anyway. Whispers in the teacher's lounge, side eyes in the hallway. She resigned shortly after. I should have felt satisfied, but it still wasn't enough. Not yet. See, I didn't just want to punish them. I wanted to rewrite the story. I wanted to live better, grow bigger, and let them watch as I thrived without them. So I leveled up. I renovated the house, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to purge it of every trace of her. New furniture, new floors. I knocked down the wall between the kitchen and dining room and opened the space up completely. Bright, fresh, alive. It felt like me again. My style, my vision. No more gray tones and shabby chic. Then I started hosting events, business dinners, charity nights, networking mixers. I invited everyone Sarah used to know, not to gloat, but to move on in plain sight. Let her old friends see that I wasn't hiding, that I hadn't crumbled. That's when I met Olivia. She wasn't someone I expected to notice me. A family law attorney, sharp as a blade, dressed like she owned every room she walked into. She came to a fundraiser I hosted for a youth mentoring program. We talked, laughed, and ended up spending hours together on the back patio, drinking old fashions and sharing stories we probably shouldn't have told strangers. She didn't ask about Sarah. She'd heard the rumors. But she didn't care. She was forward without being aggressive, confident without arrogance. Everything Sarah wasn't. We started seeing each other. Slowly at first. Then more often. Olivia wasn't looking for a savior or a caretaker. She had her own world, her own battles. Being with her didn't feel like repairing something broken. It felt like building something new. Of course, word got back to Sarah. She texted me one night, just one word. Wow. I ignored it. A few days later, she sent another, this one longer. Said she heard I'd moved on fast. That Olivia seemed nice. I didn't respond to that one either. It wasn't worth it. Then she called. I let it go to voicemail. She sounded brittle. Asked if we could meet. Just to talk, she said. I miss our friendship. I didn't respond. Because there was no friendship left. She didn't just cheat on me. She'd lied to my face, made me question my sanity, my worth, my instincts. I owed her nothing. Still, she kept trying. She emailed me, sent letters, left a message with my assistant once asking for 5 minutes. She even showed up at one of my events uninvited. Said she was just passing by. She looked tired. Her hair was longer, but her eyes had the same manipulative sparkle I remembered all too well. I politely asked her to leave. She said she still loved me. I said I didn't care. I wasn't trying to hurt her anymore, but I wasn't going to let her hurt me again either. What she didn't know was that her presence gave me one last idea. One final act of closure. I donated $50,000 in her name to the school's ethics and leadership program. Set up a scholarship for aspiring teachers, those who demonstrated strong moral character, personal accountability, and leadership in challenging circumstances. I invited the school board to the launch ceremony. I invited the press. I even invited Olivia to speak at the podium. Sarah was not invited, of course, but she was mentioned. Funded in part by the generosity of Sarah Ellis, I announced to the applause, whose journey has helped shape this program's vision for a new generation of educators. It was the truth. In a twisted way, Sarah had inspired the program, just not in the way she probably imagined. Later that week, she emailed again, just said, "That was cruel." I replied, "It was honest." And that was the last time she tried. By the end of the year, I was thriving. The company had doubled in growth. I was traveling healthier than I'd been in years, in a relationship with someone who challenged and respected me. And the best part? I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt like I'd gotten myself back. Revenge didn't come with fireworks. It came with peace, with a life rebuilt stronger than the one she tore down, and with her watching it all happen, silently from the outside. It's strange how life can come full circle, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but in small, quiet moments. A year after Sarah walked out of my life, I stood in my backyard one evening, grilling steaks for a group of friends. Olivia was inside, setting the table, laughing with two of my colleagues' wives. Music played softly from the patio speakers, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt still, whole, settled. Revenge had never been about getting even. It had been about reclaiming my dignity, my sense of self, about refusing to let someone else's choices define the rest of my story. Sarah faded from my world gradually. She moved to a nearby city, tried to start over. I heard from mutual friends that things weren't going as smoothly as she hoped. Jobs came and went. Her name didn't carry the weight it once did in our circles. Eventually, she stopped reaching out altogether. I never wished her pain. I just stopped shielding her from the consequences of her own actions. There's no perfect ending to a story like this. No grand apology, no sudden twist where everything becomes clear. What I got instead was something quieter and much more valuable: clarity. I saw what love should never look like, and in doing so, I recognized what it could be. Real love doesn't lie, it doesn't hide, it doesn't make you question your worth. Olivia and I took things slowly, deliberately. We built trust, one honest conversation at a time. There were no secrets, no masks, just two people scarred but not broken, choosing each other every day. On the anniversary of the day I found out about Sarah's affair, Olivia surprised me with a gift. A framed quote from my office wall. It said, "You don't always get the apology you deserve, but you always get the choice to forgive yourself." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was thinking of Sarah, but because I realized I didn't feel anger anymore. Just distance, growth, peace. I won't lie and say I'd do it all again. Betrayal leaves marks. But I will say this: I'm proud of how I rose from it. Proud that I didn't let bitterness rot my soul. Proud that I let the truth be my revenge and my freedom. Some people wait their whole lives to feel truly seen. I had to lose everything to find it, and now I wouldn't trade this version of myself for anything.